Imagine crawling into a crack barely wider than your chest. The light behind you disappears, the air turns still, then your hand touches a human tooth. Not one tooth, hundreds of them. They belong to a vanished human relative, a species with human-like feet, human-like hands, and a brain barely larger than a chimpanzee's. But the strangest discovery came much later. In 2026, scientists tested teeth from at least 20 individuals. They found no male marker, not one. Every tested individual appeared female. Deep inside one South African cave, an entire branch of humanity seemed to have left only its women. So where were the men? And why were the women placed in darkness? The story begins in 2013. Two cavers entered the Rising Star cave system. It sits northwest of Johannesburg. The region is called the Cradle of Humankind, a vast limestone landscape filled with ancient bones. Rick Hunter and Stephen Tucker pushed through the underground passages. Then they reached a vertical chute. Its very section was only about 18 centimeters wide, roughly the width of a dinner plate. Below it waited the Dinaledi chamber. Dinaledi means stars in Sesotho. The chamber was nearly 30 meters beneath the surface. It had no natural light, no easy entrance, and almost no large animal remains, but its floor was scattered with hominin bones. Hominin means a member of the human evolutionary family. That includes you. It also includes extinct relatives that were not your direct ancestors. The distinction matters. These creatures were human relatives, not primitive versions of modern people. To recover the fossils, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger needed unusually small scientists. The passage was simply too tight for most researchers. 6 women were selected. They became known as the underground astronauts. They crawled through the chute. They worked for hours in cramped darkness. And they brought back more than 1,500 fossil fragments. The remains represented at least 15 individuals. Infants, children, adults. Almost every major part of the skeleton appeared. In 2015, Berger and more than 40 colleagues described a new species in the journal eLife. They named it Homo Naledi. Homo means the human genus. Naledi means star. The anatomy looked like evolution had assembled it from different eras. The feet were strikingly human-like. They were built for upright walking. The legs also looked familiar. The hands had human-like wrists and thumbs, but the fingers were strongly curved, useful for climbing. The shoulders and upper body looked more ancient. So did the pelvis. The skull was the greatest contradiction. The brain case held roughly 465 to 610 cubic centimeters. Modern human brains average more than twice that volume. Yet this small-brained relative lived surprisingly recently. At first, nobody knew the fossil's age. Their primitive anatomy suggested great antiquity, perhaps more than 1 million years. Then Paul Dirks and an international team dated the cave material. Their 2017 study used several methods. Uranium series dating measured radioactive change in cave minerals. Electron spin resonance measured trapped electrical charges in teeth. Optically stimulated luminescence estimated when sediments last saw sunlight. A complicated toolkit, but the result was clear. The Homo Naledi remains were deposited between about 335,000 and 236,000 years ago. That placed them inside a shocking period. Early Homo sapiens already existed in Africa. Different human species may have shared the continent. One had a large brain, another had a brain closer in size to an australopith. Yet both walked on human-like feet. Evolution was not a ladder. It was a crowded landscape. But anatomy was only the first mystery. The cave itself was worse. How did so many bodies reach that chamber? The route was difficult. The chamber stayed dark. Geological analysis found no obvious opening large enough to drop bodies from above. Floodwater did not appear to wash them inside. Predators did not drag them there. Large prey animals were almost absent. The remains accumulated over time, not during one sudden disaster. That left a disturbing possibility. Homo naledi may have carried bodies underground, deliberately. Scientists have argued over that claim for years. Some researchers see intentional burial. Others see natural processes that remain poorly understood. In 2025, a revised eLife study presented additional evidence for deliberate burial. The researchers described shallow, grave-like features. They examined the positions of bones and surrounding sediments. But the interpretation remains debated. Burial is an extraordinary claim, especially this deep in time. Especially for a species with such a small brain. Then the teeth produced a new clue. Teeth are time capsules. Their outer enamel is the hardest tissue in your body. DNA often decays in warm environments. Proteins can survive longer. In 2026, molecular scientist Palesa Medupe led the first ancient protein study of Homo naledi. The team sampled 23 teeth. Those teeth represented at least 20 individuals. They used a minimally destructive acid treatment. It removed microscopic protein fragments. Those fragments are called peptides. Peptides are simply short chains of amino acids, the building pieces of proteins. A mass spectrometer then identified their chemical signatures. Think of it as weighing molecules with extreme precision. The team searched for amelogenin. Amelogenin is a protein involved in building tooth enamel. One version is encoded on the X chromosome. It is called AMELX. Another version is encoded on the Y chromosome. It is called AMELI. Finding AMELI is strong evidence of a biological male. The research found a similar sex and again, but they found no AMELI marker. Across all 23 teeth, across at least 20 individuals, the simplest interpretation was startling. Every tested Homo naledi individual was female. Even Neo, one of the largest and most complete skeletons. Neo had previously seemed convincing. The protein team disagreed. That means the physical variations researchers saw may not separate males from females at all. It may represent normal variation among females, and that changes the cave. This was not merely a collection of bodies. It may have been a collection selected by sex. The chance of randomly sampling 20 females from an equal population is roughly 1 in a million. That calculation sounds decisive. But science becomes most valuable when it resists the exciting answer. There is another possibility. Homo naledi males may not have produced detectable AMELI. The AMELI gene can be deleted. Rare living human males lack all or part of it. A male Neanderthal also carried an AMELI deletion. Without that gene, a male tooth could look female in this protein test. So the result does not prove every body was female. It presents two astonishing options. Either Rising Star contains only females, or Homo naledi males carried an unusual genetic pattern that erased the marker. Both possibilities rewrite something important. But suppose the first explanation is correct. Why would females alone enter this cave? Perhaps they did not enter alive. Perhaps bodies were brought there after death. That would imply selection, memory, rules. Maybe a female lineage used the chamber. Maybe daughters returned mothers there. Maybe the cave held individuals with a particular social identity. Those ideas are possible. They are not yet evidence. There is no proof of a matriarchy. No proof of priestesses. No proof of ritual sacrifice. No proof that Homo naledi understood sex as modern humans do. The cave gives a pattern, not an explanation. And the pattern may be even stranger than a burial ground. All known tested individuals from multiple parts of the cave lacked male markers. The sample included teeth from the Dinaledi chamber. It also included material associated with other areas of Rising Star. If females alone were deposited across the system, the behavior may have lasted generations. Not one evening, not one accident. A repeated tradition. That possibility forces an uncomfortable question. How much intelligence does culture require? For most of scientific history, brain size carried enormous weight. Large brain meant complex thought. Small brain meant simple behavior. Homo naledi refuses that equation. Its brain was small, its body was a mosaic. Yet the cave demands planning. You cannot casually stumble into the Dinaledi chamber. You must navigate passages. You must squeeze through rock. You must continue without daylight. If bodies were carried, the task became harder. A group would need coordination. They might need fire. They might need memory of the route. They might need a reason to return. The big twist is not that the cave may contain only females. The big twist is what those females reveal. Complex behavior may not belong to large brains. Your species did not necessarily invent every form of care, or remembrance, or social identity. Those capacities may have appeared in minds built very differently from yours. A brain 1/3 your size may still have lived inside a meaningful world. That does not prove Homo Naledi held funerals. It does not prove religion. It does not prove symbolic beliefs, but it breaks an old assumption. Anatomy cannot tell you the limits of another mind. The fossils already warned you. Human-like feet did not require a human-like skull. Dexterous hands did not require a modern shoulder. A recent date did not require modern anatomy. Now the teeth add one more contradiction. A tiny brain may have belonged to a society with rules about the dead, possibly even rules about which dead went where. You can picture the scene. Night above the South African grasslands. A small group gathers near a hidden opening. One person carries a bundle. Another tends a flame. They enter the limestone. The ceiling closes around them. They move by memory, downward, deeper, past the point where sunlight has ever reached. They arrive in a chamber already known to their community. There, they place someone among others. Perhaps a mother, perhaps a daughter, perhaps someone whose role had no modern name. Then they climb back toward the stars. That scene is reconstruction, not fact. The science cannot yet show torches. It cannot recover grief. It cannot name the relationship between the living and the dead, but it can test the teeth. And the teeth say the old picture was incomplete. For years, researchers asked why the skeletons looked so similar. The answer may be brutally simple. They were comparing females with females. The apparent male bodies may never have been male. The expected differences may have existed somewhere else, outside the cave, still undiscovered. This is what makes Rising Star so unsettling. The cave preserves an absence, no male marker, no clear route of natural entry, no simple explanation, and no living witness. Every answer opens another chamber. New protease methods may eventually solve part of the puzzle. Researchers can test more teeth. They can search for other Y-linked proteins. They can compare Homo Naledi enamel with older African hominins. They may discover whether Amelie was absent from the species, or whether the cave truly selected females. Until then, the responsible conclusion stays narrow. 20 tested individuals showed no male-specific enamel marker. The female-only interpretation is strong. It is not absolute. That uncertainty does not weaken the discovery. It makes the discovery honest. Science is not a machine that turns bones into certainty. It is a method for measuring how much you do not know. You live in a world obsessed with visible intelligence. Scores, degrees, brain scans, fast answers. Homo Naledi offers a quieter warning. A mind does not have to resemble yours to matter. A society does not have to leave cities to possess structure. And care does not need a written language to become tradition. Deep beneath South Africa, 20 ancient individuals waited inside their teeth. Not for a name, not for a legend, for a molecule small enough to survive 300,000 years. You entered the cave looking for the missing men. You leave wondering how much of humanity was never uniquely yours.